The stories we tell ourselves are extremely powerful, and changing the narrative takes an incredible amount of self-awareness and conviction to our values and beliefs about who we want to be in this world. Once you realize that you don't need to subscribe to the stories that don't serve you anymore, you then get to rewrite the story. And this is extremely important, not just for you as an educator, but for the students who are watching us so they can see the adults in their lives recognize their agency and make decisions as such. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And of course, change only happens within community. So make sure you join the Empowered Educator Faculty Room on Facebook, which is an incredible community of empowered educators ready to change the world. I can't wait to see you there. Remember all the passion and vision you had when you first went into teaching? Feeling like building young minds and creating community through your work would make a lasting impact on this world? Well, those days may feel like they're behind you now because you're exhausted, stressed, and overwhelmed and frustrated, but I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be like this. In fact, the love of teaching never really went away, but it absolutely needs transformation. Welcome to the Take Notes podcast. I'm Jen Rafferty, former music teacher, mom of two, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, and I'm here to light the way for you. In order to create a generational change for our kids, we need to shift the paradigm away from the perpetual stress and overwhelm and into a life of joy and fulfillment. This is Education 2.0, where you become the priority, shift how you live your life, and how you show up both at work and at home. So take a sip of steamy morning coffee and grab your notebook. It's time to take notes. Hello and welcome back to another great episode of Take Notes. I am here with Dan Tricarico, who has been a high school English teacher for over 30 years. He is also the author of the Zen Teacher, Creating Focus, Simplicity, and Tranquility in the Classroom, and Sanctuaries, Self-Care Secrets for Stressed Out Teachers. And in his spare time, he enjoys writing, listening to music, reading mystery novels, watching movies, and staring out of windows. And one of his first loves is writing poetry. He has published many poems, both in print and online. And Dan, I am so excited to continue our conversation because we've actually talked a lot in the last few weeks. Thank you so much for being here on the show.
We have, and thank you for having me. I've already learned so much from you, and thank you for your generosity in having me here.
Absolutely. Let's kind of get in this. So I want to know, why is a Zen teacher or embodying Zen? First of all, maybe what is it? And then why is it important?
Yeah, that was one thing I kind of had to define for myself because I was always interested in sort of Eastern philosophy. And I remember I was taking a walk, I was stressed out. I was trying to calm down. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, it's just so crazy. Education is so crazy. It's like they want you to be a Zen teacher or something. And then the light bulb went off and I was like, oh, wait, that's the thing. That's something. That's what I need to focus on. And the way I define it in the first book, The Zen Teacher, is Zen is noticing your surroundings in your environment exactly as they are without judgment and without anticipating any specific outcome. So just the mindfulness, being in the moment, just accepting things as they are and noticing them as they are. And we don't do that. We're very wrapped up in things that happened last week, looking forward and worrying, anticipating about what's coming next, instead of just being right where we are. And I figured if I could be right where I was in the classroom, things would get a lot better. And at the time, this was around 2013, 14, I had 10 years left and I was wondering how I was going to make it through. And since putting these practices in place, I now have a couple of years left, 2 or 3 maybe, and I know I'm going to make it through. So it worked for me and hopefully other people can benefit too.
Yeah, I think it's that time when you start counting down years to retirement. That's like a really good indication that something needs to change.
So 10 was early is what you're saying.
No, honestly, I have people who are like, only 15 more years or only, yes. And the truth is, we don't want to spend our careers counting down the days until we get to retire. So then what? What are we waiting for? Let's start today. And I think some of the things that you talked about, just being present, is difficult when you're not used to doing that. I think the challenge sometimes is in the practice of being present. So can you speak a little bit about what that could look like and how do you practice being present?
That's a great question. And there are a lot of ways. And for me, it goes all the way back. I was a drama major and an actor. And I know you have a performing arts background and singing. You probably went through the same things where the drama teachers and acting teachers taught us about being in the moment with your scene partner, breathing exercises, relaxation exercises, using your senses, all of those things. And I thought, well, that's what teachers need. And so I put those in place. And especially just to give your listeners a quick example and a practical thing they can take away right now is the idea of using your senses. Is if you're feeling stressed out, if you feel that anxiety rising, tune into your senses. And there's a great exercise. I've heard it called 555, where you think of what are 5 things I'm seeing? What are 5 things I'm hearing? What are 5 things I'm feeling, not like emotionally, but tangibly? Like I feel my bum on the chair. I feel the shirt collar on my neck, I feel the glasses on my face. And then when you go through that litany of things that you're sensing with your senses, it just grounds me. It brings me right back to the present moment. I've stopped thinking about whatever I was freaking out about, and I'm right back in the moment. So that's just one thing that they can do right now.
Yeah, and that's a really simple exercise. And it's true. It's just about really being in the moment of self-awareness, because even the word mindfulness has become very triggering for people. It's been very buzzy. And so folks, I think, conflate this idea of mindfulness with, this meditation practice and everyone's just holding hands and singing Kumbaya. And, the truth is that that's not really what this is at all. This is about getting out of your head and into your body so you can actually be here now.
Exactly. And you just mentioned there was a famous counterculture psychologist named Ram Dass, and he wrote a book called Be Here Now. I tried to read it a couple times, wasn't really my cup of tea, couldn't really get into it, but I love that title. And I remind myself, Danny, be here now, be here now. If I'm freaking out about something, just be here now. And that's such a great mantra to come back to. But you're right, it's very triggering, very buzzwordy. And like a lot of things, that idea of being here now is very simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Simple and easy are 2 different things. And it takes a lot of practice. And our culture does not reward, we're always supposed to be striving for something or going. And I got kind of tired of that, Jen. And I said, I'm not doing that anymore. And so part of that was just being where I was.
Sure. Well, it's quite literally exhausting.
Yes, absolutely. You're just worn out.
Yeah, we're just exhausted. And then we wonder why it's hard to get up in the morning and we're not motivated to do things. We're always busy, go, do, hustle, not even being where your feet are. It's being where the next thing is going to be, which we know the future is completely unpredictable. We have no idea what's going to happen.
Exactly. I love how you just said, be where your feet are. I'm writing that down because I love that expression.
Yeah, that's my phrase. Be here now, but be where your feet are. That's a good one for me. I use that often, actually, when I wake up in the middle of the night and my mind starts to race about some things. I take a breath and it's, Jen, be where your feet are, which happens to be in bed in my delicious comforter. That kind of brings me the peace that I need to then go back to sleep. But you mentioned the word acceptance, and I want to talk about that for a second, because when I talk about acceptance, I think sometimes people get a little bit sore about it because they think acceptance means being happy with what it is right now. And that's really not what acceptance is. Acceptance is not just like, oh, well, it is what it is. Acceptance is, I am speaking into a microphone. I accept that this is a microphone. I accept that I am here in New York and you are here in California. I accept that, right? And so coming from a place of acceptance can also bring you into a place of presence. How do you talk about acceptance in the work that you do?
Good question. I love how you defined it, and I'm kind of right there with you, but I would say that there are other ways I look at it too. To me, acceptance is saying, this is how things are. We're big in our culture on duality, good, bad, happy, sad, all of this, but things just are. We're the ones assigning meaning to them. And so if we can resist that temptation of assigning meaning, then the stress and the anxiety and the tension can lower, because then things just are. And you said a phrase that I always talk about, how there's a teacher I work with, and it's just his habit to say, oh, it is what it is. And that's just how he punctuates his conversations. But I'm like, I don't think you understand how Zen you're being when you say that, because it is just what it is. I was listening today, I was driving, and Paul Simon's song, Still Crazy After All These Years, came on. And in the little chorus area, he says, I'll never worry. Why should I? It's all going to fade, And I just was driving along going, that's it, Paul. You got it. You nailed it. I tell everybody, everything's temporary, good and bad, right? So if you're having a really hard time, just go, it's going to end. And it seems like sometimes these things go on forever, But if you can just look at the world and your experience like, I'm here, this is what's happening. If you don't like it, sometimes you just need to sit with it for a while. I think the current buzzword is just holding space. They call it holding space. But then also it's a dance, because it's also, what steps can I take to change it to what I do want it to be like? And so accept what is, but move toward what you want. So it's both.
Right. And I think the thing that came to me when we were saying it is what it is, sometimes when people say that, there is kind of this negative undertone to it. Whereas this idea of everything being neutral, it truly is. Everything, nothing means anything
Exactly.
until you give it meaning. And so it's not always it is what it is. It is the way you think it is. And I think that that is an important thing because, like what you said too, is what meaning am I making of this thing? And if it truly is like it is what it is in a place of actual neutral acceptance, awesome. However, and I'm sure you've had these conversations with people and they kind of verbal diarrhea about the latest thing that they're grumpy about. It's like, man, well, it is what it is. That's not quite the same frequency you're talking about here. So I think it's important because there's actually a particular instance that I have in mind with somebody saying that, which really stuck with me because it's not just semantics there. It's really about intentionality. And it's that meaning. And we do make meaning of everything. So can you talk a little bit about that too, of why do we make meaning about things and how does it interfere or not necessarily interfere, I think create the reality which we make for ourselves and maybe interfere with what it is that we actually want.
Exactly. And we could talk for hours about this because we're going deep here now. But what I thought of when you were talking about that is how when we're in a situation and it's stressing us out and we're aware enough to say, okay, this is because I'm assigning a certain meaning to this, we need to start asking things like, am I assigning a meaning to this? Am I assigning the right meaning to this? Is the meaning that I'm assigning accurate? All of those kinds of questions can impact your circumstances wildly. And you need to be aware enough and, as you said, intentional enough to start to mess around with the meaning that you're doing. But people get really weird about that because we don't like change. We like the status quo. We're worried that we're going to do something that's against our value system. And then that's when we really need to go even that one level deeper and start listening to our conscience, is what it's sometimes called intuition, that inner voice. And on our previous conversation, you talked a lot about alignment. And I think that's part of it too. If it starts to feel out of alignment, then either you're assigning the wrong meaning or you're in the wrong situation, or you need to mess around with, well, what does this mean to me? And what am I calling this thing? And can I call it something else? Or do I need to just be in a different place?
Yes. And there are so many places where I want to go with this, particularly with self-trust. But I was hoping that for the sake of our listeners who kind of want a little bit of a concrete example, can you take us through a scenario in which this kind of situation could come up?
Here's a super simple one, and I'm going to be very vulnerable here. In high school, if I had a crush on a girl and I wanted to ask her out, I would go up and ask her out. And if she said no, I said, she hates me, right? That was a meaning that I was assigning to that interaction in that circumstance. So what happened was every time I had to try to ask somebody out, I was paralyzed. I couldn't do it because I had assigned so much pressure and so much meaning to that experience that I couldn't do it. And then what you learn, hopefully over, 50 years maybe, is that, hey, there could be a million reasons for the no, but you don't have to assign it that meaning. And then what happens is it becomes easier to hear that no and then to move on and to try again. And that's, I use the asking somebody out example, but anything that you try where you risk rejection, where you risk a no, where you're not sure if it's going to work out, it would fall under that.
Sure. And that's a great example. Thank you for sharing. We all can relate to that, Dan.
Okay. I guess it's a little universal.
You're not alone. We've all been there. In that example, we could just use that example in your adolescent brain too. There are now neural connections that now solidify this story. Your brain actively looks for other evidence that affirms this. And so any no, whether it be a no from a teacher as you get older, a no from a colleague, a no from a boss, a no from a parent, a no from a spouse, whatever, all of a sudden there's now that meaning that's connected to it of this person doesn't like me. And so this is where it becomes really I'll use that word again, universal problem because we're stuck in a story.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we're stuck in the meaning. And so what I'm hearing you say, which is, aligned with so much of the work that I do, is once we start to notice these stories that we are subscribing to, we have this beautiful ability to just unsubscribe.
Exactly. Just like a bad email, just
Yeah, it's just a
unsubscribe.
bad email. Just unsubscribe. We don't have to believe anything. You can believe whatever you want to believe. In knowing that, that's really where your power comes in, because whether that person says yes or no, it has absolutely nothing to do with you. And you can decide then how you're going to respond based on, like what you said, your values, your intuition, and how that aligns with who you want to be.
Right. Very true. And it applies, as you said, to so many situations that we would encounter. And my thought was, when you talk about changing the stories, I must have been I'll be 60 this year in September, and I must have been in my 50s before I realized you could change the story. And that was a life-changing moment. So where were you when I was 16? That's what I want to know.
Well, that's why we're doing this podcast right now, Dan.
Okay. To help other 16-year-olds. That's all right.
Yes. And here's the thing, and you hit on, my mission, and I know this is something that you believe in too. When I think that teachers and school leaders and office staff and custodians and bus drivers and nurses and paraprofessionals, anybody that works on the school campus, you are the linchpin to this work. Because when you start embodying this work and really understanding what it means to own your story, to co-create your own reality, to decide how you want to feel, and then do the thing that aligns with that feeling, then all of a sudden the students see the adults in their lives living with calm and peace and joy as, fullest expressions of themselves. And that really sets the tone. I mean, that's the business that I'm in, Dan.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's contagious to the students, and they'll pick up on that. Can I take a moment and connect two of the ideas that you've talked about? This idea of narrative, that story in your head, with acceptance is, and this is where I get a little militant and get on my soapbox a little bit, but you were talking about the stories in education. And so many teachers accept the stories that are told about, you need to do it for the kids, you need to sacrifice. I didn't have this word when I started teaching, but now we would say, as educators, we are totally gaslit. But there's so much gaslighting that goes on about what you should or shouldn't be doing as a teacher, and you can change that narrative. And that's what I had to do. And I had to stop listening to all of that stuff. And the one thing that comes to mind, Jen, is the meme that I've seen a million times. And when I first saw it, I thought, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard, where it says teachers are in it for the not the income, but the outcome. And I thought, that's awesome. And I'm a teacher, and it's so noble that I'm doing this, and I'm sacrificing. And I put the back of my palm against my head, and I just felt like a Scarlett O'Hara. And, I thought, this is the greatest thing in the world. And then, like a couple of years ago, after I had been doing the Zen Teacher work for a while, I was like, what? I was like, that is the most gaslighting meme. We're in it for the outcome and the income, and we deserve to be paid like professionals who have commensurate experience and training, and doctors and lawyers and stuff like that, or wherever we would fall on the training and experience. And we're not. And I have to say, and we can go down this road if you want, we don't have to go down this road. I think it goes all the way back to when teaching was primarily a woman's job. And they were just like, yeah, we don't have to pay you a lot, 76 cents on the dollar, or probably then it was, less, of course. But I think it goes all the way back to that. And so you go into teaching knowing you're not going to make a lot of money versus other professions. But also there's this narrative that needs to be busted. I say we need to stop listening to that narrative yesterday and move forward. And so we, as teachers, have been accepting, and we were talking about acceptance in a good way, but here's acceptance in a bad way. We've been accepting this story that we don't deserve anymore, that we can't have anymore. And that's, I'll say baloney, because I'm sure this is a family show.
It's okay. You can say bullshit. That's fine.
It's bullshit. Total bullshit. So yeah. So that's my little soapbox. But yeah, I mean, teachers and educators, and like you said, anybody who works in education in any level, change that narrative. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to be that person. They are gaslighting you. Okay, I'm done.
No, I don't want you to be done, because this is important. I'll hop right on that soapbox with you. So there's so many things here. I'm like writing down furiously. So I make sure that I hit on all of the things I want to talk about. So first of all, accepting stories that don't serve us. I think that this might be semantics, but I want to be really intentional with my words about this. So believing stories that aren't serving us, because acceptance to me, in my world, feels like, okay, because it is the way things are right now, I then can take action myself. I think sometimes when we feel like this, well, you just have to accept this right now or not accept this, or in this almost aggressive or anger, because it's coming from anger, right? There's this finger pointing and blame that happens. But you and I both know that change doesn't actually happen when you're pointing fingers at other people. It just doesn't. Nobody is going to take things off of your plate. Nobody is going to wake up one day and say, oh, here's all of the back pay that you've all earned for the last several decades of your, no one's doing this. And so in understanding the stories in which you've come to believe, accepting, okay, this is actually what the reality is right now. So now I can decide what is my next move. I think that's really important. So then you can say, all right, unsubscribe to this, no thank you for this, and no thank you for this, because that's when we can actually start moving forward. And I think another story that is extremely dangerous, which goes along the same lines of what you were just talking about, which I speak about in my TED Talk, is that teachers are not superheroes. It's the same thing, that we just are expected to live up to this ideal of being these immortal and indestructible creatures, where we are human beings that have human needs and need to be taken care of in a society that values other humans, because we are teaching other humans. And so it is dangerous, these ideas that are floating around. And at first, like you said, makes people feel good. And I will tell you, I subscribe to that superhero narrative myself because I had to believe it. Because if I didn't believe it, then I would have to really start questioning a lot of this chaos that was going on in my life, both in and out of school. But if I was a superhero, I could just take it.
You just handle it.
I could just handle it. And so I needed that narrative. It was out of emotional and mental safety for me.
Well, plus you're surrounded by people who are doing it. And then you look weird if you don't do it.
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah, let's be superheroes. So I want to just also say, like, if this is something that you have been subscribing to, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah. We should look at that.
It's in the air. It's in the air that you breathe, right? This isn't your fault. However, we have a responsibility to ourselves to wake up. And I want to also talk about the second thing that you had mentioned about teaching being women's work. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I actually had a beautiful interview with Amelia Nagoski, who is the author of Burnout. And that's episode 25, if you want to take a listen to that after you listen to this episode, obviously. But she also talks about that too, that the structures in which the school systems are set up are based in the fact that education is women's work. And so this idea that we not only don't need to get paid as much, we are expected to give of ourselves in a way that disregards our own human needs. It's a really interesting phenomenon, which gets my fire going. And so I'm glad that you brought that up too, because that is relevant to what's happening right now.
Well, I think I do bring it up occasionally when it fits the conversation, is because I think it's important for people to see that a man realizes that, and that a man is not okay with it. I'm the father of 2 daughters, and they are powerhouses and they are go-getters, and they will do anything they want to do, but they are functioning in a society that values them less, pays them less, and all of that. And I knew that even before I had kids, but I don't think we talk about it enough. And I don't think we do enough about it.
Right. We don't. So here we are talking about all the things that need to be spoken about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the word you used that I wrote down was dangerous. These attitudes are dangerous because they hurt people. They burn people out. They cause people to not take care of themselves. And what I love about what you do, and why I think our platforms and messages are so complementary, is because when I was going through this, I had a wife and kids and a mortgage and all of this. And I was like, I don't have the bandwidth to change the infrastructure, even though I recognized there were massive problems, that the education profession is broken. I said, I can only change me. And so I started working on that. But you're working on the infrastructure. You're working with schools that can change their culture, their system. And then so I think if what we're doing, as it does, I know it does, has this ripple effect, then maybe we change the system and we change the individuals and things get better.
Yes. And here's the thing. Systems don't change until people change.
There you go.
And so while, yes, it seems sometimes like for me, what I'm doing, it looks like it's coming from that organizational standpoint. It has to be at the individual level because you are the only person that can make change, which is why pointing fingers doesn't work. I can't work with a school district where a principal or an administrator doesn't want to do the work themselves because it will not work. It doesn't matter how much your teachers have buy-in. If at the top you don't want to do the work yourself, forget it. And vice versa. It just won't work. And so when we go in and we have these conversations and these workshops and these trainings with these people, it is very personal because it has to be. Because you're right, you can't go in and change infrastructure. Literally, the only thing you can change is yourself. That's it. And I remember I read this one book, it was, I think it's called The Burnout Epidemic. And I was like, oh, cool. I'll read and learn and get some more content. And I'll tell you, it was all of this like organizational hating. Whereas, here's what bosses need to be doing, and here's what you need to do for your staff. And, the top needs to do this, and you need to, and the thing is, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. You have to be the change. You have to. And I think that's what makes programs like mine and yours so successful is because we are the embodiment of the work. I never say something to somebody that I don't practice myself.
That's so important.
Yeah.
And I try to do the same thing. The trouble, though, is that, and I'm sure you've seen this, is when you are in there and you're starting to change yourself and you're calling out the emperor's new clothes and saying, hey, there's a problem here. You look like the curmudgeon. You look like the grumpy one. You look like the complainer. And I tell people, teachers that I work with, that you're going to get funny looks. You're going to ruffle feathers. But as you've said, you have to take care of you. And as you said, nobody's going to come up to me and go, Danny, you look tired. Why don't you take a nap? Right? I need to do that for myself. And so when I say no, or when I say I've had enough of that committee, or the little soapbox I'm on right now is that I'm getting so many requests for information on students from various other people at the schools, the psychologists, the special ed advocates, the counseling department, whatever, all this stuff, all people just doing their job, just trying to work on student success, noblest intentions in the world. But when I, in 3 weeks, am getting 25, 26 requests to fill out these forms and these psychological batteries, and like, what am I supposed to plan or grade or teach, right? But there's no comprehensive centralized system for requesting this information. So it just gets dumped on some individual teachers. So somebody's got to say something about that. And there are laws in place, and there are, we can't change this and we can't change that. But I'm like, well, then Ralph Waldo Emerson, civil disobedience, I'm not doing it. When Rosa Parks stood up, she was breaking a law, but it was a bad law, right? And so we can't let that be the excuse that that's the way we've always done it, or there's a law or whatever. And teachers just need to say enough.
Yeah. And that we can talk forever about that. But I do want to talk for a second, though. You said no one's going to come up to you and say, Dan, you really could use a nap. Go take a nap. In my world, that's what I want. I want people to look at you and be like, hey, you look like you need a break. You want to go take 5? I got you. Like, that is the organizational structure of the school systems that I want, because those schools are going to take care of their kids. And that's the generational change that I am interested in, period.
Exactly. That's wonderful. And I know you are already making that happen. And I know you will make that happen. And you're a little bit younger than I am. It'll be after I'm out. But that's okay, because what the greatest thing, and why I devoted 30 years of my life to this, is the ripple effect that we have generationally is incalculable. And I can't think of another more important job. And somebody asked me, or like there was some interview thing I was doing, and they said, the question was, is teaching worth it? And I said, absolutely. Teaching is 100% worth it. Teaching is the most important, noblest thing I can think of to do. The education profession, however, is a different story. And the education profession is broken, and they're two different things. Teaching is not the education profession, and the education profession is not teaching. And so what I do, I talked about ruffling feathers, is I go into my classroom, I do my little thing, I do my shows, I do my teaching. The kids learn in my way with my style, and I teach very intuitively. And a lot of other teachers don't understand it, and they don't quite know what I'm doing, or in some cases think, well, that's not what we're doing, so it must not be as good, which is also a whole other thing. But I don't care. I'm in alignment. I trust that with my experience and my training, I know I'm doing a good job. I do look at the data and the assessments and say, okay, we're making progress. And that's all that matters to me.
Yeah. So with all of that being said, I need to ask you, what is your dream for the future of education?
I'll split it in two, and I'm going to kind of piggyback a little bit on what you said. Is 10 years ago, my dream would have been very selfishly to make it through. That would have been my dream for education. But I love what you said about the generational change. And I would love to see the dream for the future of education be in a place where, of course, all students are learning, but where the teachers are not only taking care of themselves, but are taken care of, both. And the story I tell sometimes is I was having a conversation with my publisher, and he said, on your blog and the tweets that you're sending out, it's getting a little strident. It's getting a little soapboxy. You got to be careful. You want to maybe dial it back a little bit. I said, okay, important feedback. Let me go think about that. And I thought about it a couple of days, called him back, and I said, I understand what you're saying. And here's the thing. I'm going to stop complaining about how teachers should be taken care of, and I'm just going to start taking care of teachers. And the difference to me is that I thought, well, who am I? I'm just this guy, I'm just this teacher, this, silly teacher in San Diego. What leverage do I have? But when I started talking about it, when I started modeling it, like you said, and doing it myself, people take notice. And so the more that we can get that everybody kind of moving in that direction, that's the dream for the future of education, is teachers who are taken care of. And I had something I called the Zen Teacher Retreat. It was the only live event I ever had, and I'd love to do it again. I said, what's my goal there is I want teachers to be listened to and feel pampered. And I thought, because that's something I never felt. I never felt either of those things. That's also part of my dream for the future.
Yes, please. More of that. So if people want to learn more about you and your work and your books, what's an easy place for them to get in touch?
I would start with the website, which is thezenteacher.com. You can sign up there to be on my email list and get a little booklet that I have on how to reduce stress. I'm on Twitter at the Zen Teacher. Instagram is at Zen Teacher. I guess when I signed up, I was late to the party and the was already taken. I experimented with TikTok, but I got a little bored with it, so I don't do that as much anymore, but it's there under the Zen Professional. And I think those are the best ways. Then you can email me at teachingzen@gmail.com.
Fantastic. And what's the best way to get your book?
Amazon, just Amazon. You can reach out to me if you want, if you're one of those people like I am who just, wants a little note inside.
Great. Fantastic. All those links will be in the show notes. It'll be super easy for people to get in touch. So Dan, thank you so much for your time. It's always so great to talk with you.
Yeah, I enjoy talking with you too. And you got me fired up. So let's go do this thing.
Yes. And for those of you who are listening, I hope you are also fired up. Let's go do this thing. Change happens when we change ourselves. So if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you share it with a friend, subscribe, and write an awesome review. And we'll see you next time on Take Notes. Incredible, right? Together, we can revolutionize the face of education. It's all possible, and it's all here for you right now. Let's keep the conversation going at Empowered Educator Faculty Room on Facebook.